What is your main takeaway on this story right now? What would the FBI be looking at right now?
Good morning, ma'am. I think the priority one are these backpacks and these pieces of evidence that we've seen in that video. Likely the FBI's Phoenix division is in contact with big box stores and retailers in that area and with their corporate security offices to see exactly who may have purchased these types of items in the past several weeks, and particularly of interest if they purchased 2 or 3 things together, if they purchased a ski mask together, if they purchased a backpack together. That's going to help investigators even narrow it down.
What if everything people believe about Savannah Guthrie and the disappearance is only the surface? What if the real story didn't begin the night an 84-year-old matriarch vanished from her home in the Catalina foothills, but inside a courtroom where silence spoke louder than words? Cameras were not focused on a masked intruder. They were focused on faces, tight jaws, controlled breathing, expressions that appeared calm, maybe too calm. When Savannah Guthrie stepped forward, polished and composed, something shifted. The question lingered, was it grief or was it control under pressure? The case itself raises serious concerns. An elderly woman missing from a neighborhood considered secure. Security cameras reportedly removed. Blood near the doorway. No forced entry. An Ozark Trail 25L backpack recovered. A suspect described as comfortable at 2 a.m. inside someone else's home. That word alone carries weight. Now sealed documents, urgent motions, and courtroom whispers suggest the investigation is widening. Anonymous sources claim scrutiny extends beyond one moment toward relationships, proximity, and connections around the family. The central question remains unanswered. As new details surface, why do they seem to point toward places some would rather not examine?
Are you actively investigating the son-in-law in this case? There were reports earlier this week and you refuted that. You said you haven't eliminated everybody. Have you eliminated him or come close to it, or are you actively looking at him?
We're actively looking at everybody we come across in this case. Everybody. We would be irresponsible if we didn't talk to everybody, the Uber driver, the gardener, the pool person, whoever, everybody. It's so cliche, but everybody's still a suspect in our eyes. That's just how we look at things and think as cops. Does that mean we have a prime suspect? No, and the family's been very cooperative. They've done everything we've asked of them, and we want that relationship to continue. And sometimes people can be mean out there, and that can really harm us and harm our efforts.
The courtroom did not feel like a space for private mourning. It felt structured, observed, documented. Cameras lined the room. Reporters watched in silence. Legal teams moved through papers with precision. At the center of it all stood the Guthrie family. Annie Guthrie held a tissue in her hands, but did not use it. Cameron Guthrie remained still, his gaze fixed forward, jaw tightened under pressure. Savannah Guthrie appeared composed, dressed in a tailored navy suit, her posture controlled, her expression measured. That composure, to some, registered as strength. To others, it raised quiet questions. What marked this hearing as different was not merely procedure, but the acknowledgement of sealed investigative motions in open court. When Judge Halpern referenced ongoing forensic expansion into peripheral associations, the language carried weight. Legal terminology sounded distant, but its implication was clear. The scope of review was expanding beyond the immediate scene. Public attention has focused on details like a masked presence, an Ozark Trail 25L backpack, security footage reportedly removed, blood near an entry point, unknown DNA, and no forced entry. These elements form the foundation of the investigation as presented so far. An anonymous source from within the sheriff's department suggested this was not random. The claim emphasized that whoever entered may have understood routines that were not publicly visible, pointing investigators toward familiarity as a possible factor. Not proof, but an active line of inquiry shaping the direction of the case.
Nancy Guthrie was at her home in the privacy and security of her own home. That's the lowest risk environment she could possibly be in, especially a home like this, set back from the road and having a good perimeter around it. So that means that to invade that privacy and security, that's the highest risk for an offender. So this is a very high-risk crime on a low-risk victim. which means that the motivation must have been greater than the risk that was taken by this offender. And so motivations are typically money. If that's the case, then it's a kidnapping. If they ask for a ransom, then that would qualify as a kidnapping. Otherwise, it would be an abduction. And other motives could be revenge, some kind of personal ideology, or for sex crimes. And yes, even in cases of a victim of this age, there are people who commit sex crimes. So we don't know what the motive is, but we do know that it was very, very high in motivation because they overcame such a high risk. The next thing is the fact that they removed her from the home.
New routines that weren't public. Let that sit. Nancy Guthrie wasn't flashy. She wasn't posting her schedule online. She wasn't live streaming her grocery trips. So how does someone know when she's alone? How do they know when cameras are active or which angle to disable first? You don't guess that. You learn it. And then it gets stranger. 3 weeks before the alleged abduction, neighbors reported a dark SUV idling near the corner of Hawthorne and Bell Ridge. No visible plates on camera. No traffic violations. It appeared twice, then disappeared. Coincidence? Possibly. But the FBI reportedly requested surveillance footage from January 11th, a date that has not been publicly explained. Why that date? Why not the night before? Why not the day of? Why look 3 weeks back unless investigators believe someone was observing, studying patterns, mapping movement? Analysis requires information. Pattern recognition requires time. Now consider the Ozark Trail 25L backpack, exclusive to Walmart. Retail insiders reportedly noted a spike in bulk purchases of that model in the Tucson region in late January. Bulk purchases raise questions, not conclusions. Who buys multiple packs at once? Outdoor users? Or someone preparing for something else? Then there is another name circulating in public discussion, Tamiso Kayan, the son-in-law. Publicly cleared? No. Officially charged? Also no. Authorities describe cooperation. According to Sheriff Nanos, everyone remains under review until resolution. Cleared is not the same as eliminated. When asked about extended social proximity, Sheriff Nanos responded that ongoing review does not equal guilt, but it also does not provide reassurance. A sealed affidavit was filed under urgent protective order. It was heavily redacted. Yet one phrase reportedly slipped through.
I hope they get the suspect, because I'm not it. They better do their job and find the suspect that did it so they can clear my name, and I'll be done. Look at what I'm putting my family through.
You're on
not
national news now.
Not just them, even my parents in Tucson. Yeah.
Secondary access familiarity. Secondary access. Not the primary resident, not the homeowner, not immediate family. Someone who has been inside the space before. Someone who has visited often enough to know where the Google Nest doorbell is mounted. Someone who understands that Nancy Guthrie preferred the side hallway light on after 10 p.m. Someone aware of the garage sensor delay. That is not random presence. That suggests familiarity. And while attention online centered on Tamiso Kayan, the broader question remained in the margins. Who else had comfortable access? Who else moved through that orbit quietly and without scrutiny? Comfort at a scene is not confidence. It is knowledge. And knowledge is built over time. This was not chaos. It felt structured. It felt deliberate. Then, 48 hours after the courtroom hearing, a document surfaced online, briefly, before disappearing. Screenshots were saved, archived, and shared before moderation removed it. It was described as an internal FBI memo, stamped as a preliminary behavioral assessment. It was labeled unverified. It could have been fabricated, but the language drew attention. It referenced behavior described as non-urgent environmental navigation consistent with prior spatial exposure, meaning the individual did not move like a stranger. The wording suggested prior presence, prior awareness of the layout. The memo also mentioned informal social familiarity clusters. Clusters, plural. That implies investigators were not limiting their review to one household, but expanding outward. Mapping relationships. Reviewing friends, colleagues, frequent visitors, and anyone who had entered the residence over time. Then came the financial pattern reports. Sources claimed cash withdrawals under $9,000 were identified within the outer circle weeks before the disappearance. Structured withdrawals. Below reporting thresholds. Legal? Not automatically criminal. Suspicious? In investigations like this, financial patterns rarely get ignored. Meanwhile, public attention intensified. Photos resurfaced from past gatherings, holiday events, backyard barbecues, church fundraisers at St. Philip's in the Hills. In some images, a familiar figure stood slightly off-center, close, present, but not immediate family. Online observers zoomed in on posture, positioning, tattoos, gestures. The phrase "comfortable at 2 a.m." began trending, because in the footage, the suspect did not appear frantic. The individual adjusted objects, even reportedly blocking a camera, with deliberate motion. That behavior is often interpreted as calm. Calm can signal confidence. Confidence usually reflects knowledge, and knowledge often comes from access. At the same time, rumors circulated that investigators were quietly requesting voluntary DNA samples from extended associates, not through arrests, but through careful outreach. That detail alone suggests direction. Authorities rarely expand collection efforts without narrowing their focus. Another detail surfaced: a gray SUV captured by a parking lot camera circling twice the night before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Records reportedly linked the vehicle to someone who had attended multiple gatherings at the residence over the past 2 years. Coincidence, perhaps. But in complex investigations, repeated proximity begins to resemble pattern. Behind closed doors in Pima County, procedural movements continued. A sealed motion reportedly requested expanded geolocation data covering a 3-week window before the disappearance, not hours, but weeks. That is not reactive investigation. That is timeline reconstruction. Additional financial subpoenas reportedly targeted individuals described in filings as non-resident recurring affiliates, people orbiting the household, but not living inside it. Meanwhile, public statements from Savannah Guthrie remained controlled. We trust the investigation. Observers dissected tone and expression. Some saw restraint, others saw calculation. Much of that interpretation reflects projection, because definitive answers have not yet emerged. Authorities also reference proximity-based analysis in response to questions. That language signals relationship mapping, not speculation. If the suspect was not immediate family, if forensic results do not directly implicate household members, and if investigators are widening their scope, then suspicion does not sit at the center alone. It often sits just outside it, close enough to observe, close enough to understand routines, close enough to move unnoticed. And as silence continues from official channels, the absence of public updates often means investigators are working behind the scenes, tightening evidence, tracing digital footprints, and reconstructing movement. In cases like this, nothing unfolds instantly. It unfolds through documents, data, and connections, through pings, through patterns, through motions filed quietly under seal.